Good evening, everybody. When I was 18 years old, I got my first fake ID. Some friends and I had gone out and had probably had too much to drink. But we still needed to get home, and we were 18, so we decided to drive ourselves. On the way home, we got into an accident, but we were so scared that we just kept going. We got home and went to sleep. The next day on the news, we had learned that we had actually killed somebody in that accident, and the police were asking anyone with any information to come forward. Now, what if I was to ask you if that was simply a story or if that was really true? What would you say? Identifying the truths and the lies within and the gray areas in between is possible. Now, most of you are probably thinking, well, yeah, sure, a lie detector test solves that problem for us. But does it? What does a lie detection test actually tell us? Well, it tells us three things. It tells us whether somebody's being truthful, it tells us whether somebody is not being truthful, and it tells us when the results are inconclusive. And that means they actually could not tell you accurately whether somebody was being truthful or not. The difference between actual and fictional cues of deception are sometimes the most microscopic and unnoticeable of details, all of which will fall into two categories, verbal and nonverbal cues. Now we're going to look at those here in just a minute, but let's first look at some indicators that we are all aware of. So what are they? What are the signs that we all immediately know that point out someone who is not being honest? Of course, we all know that when somebody is not able to make direct eye contact, that means they're lying, right? Or when a person just can't sit still, they're constantly fidgeting, they're biting their nails, they're scratching their head, they're tapping their hands and feet. These things are all telltale signs that someone is not telling us the truth, or at least the whole truth, aren't they? Actually, no. Some of these are false stereotypes that are essentially meaningless unless you know how to connect them together to develop a pattern. So if all these signs that we have always known to be truth tellers are actually false, then what are true signs to detect deceit? Well, the reality is that there is no one sign or handful of signs that we can have that determines deceitfulness or not. Looking at an example of a suspect interrogation, what are the real signs that can be looked at as an indicator? Just as in a lie detection machine, it is important to establish a baseline by having a regular conversation with meaningless questions and statements that you already know to be true. Upon doing this, it is not the actual answer that you want to focus on, but the way they give that answer, how they respond. Are they sitting up straight or are they slouched? What is their tone? What are their facial expressions? Are they generally calm or are they very anxious? And then you're going to want to watch how those behaviors change throughout the questioning process. Now, clearly those are examples of what we would call nonverbal cues. So looking for verbal signs of deception, again, it is important to simultaneously be watching for behaviors and listening to how a person speaks to establish that baseline. Generally, even when a person is being truthful, they will be very nervous when being interrogated. So fidgeting and stuttering may just be that person's nervous behaviors. It is when we notice the changes over the duration that we can piece different signs together to get a more accurate picture. Things like repeating a question before giving an answer, using excessive verbal pauses such as like, well. These are also very important signs. Another important sign is inconsistent verb usage. For example, if a person is being interrogated in a missing person investigation and they consistently insist that they have nothing to do with that disappearance, but yet they're referring to that person and that situation in a past tense, well, that's a very important indication that they may know something more than what they want you to know. So now we know that there is no silver lining when it comes to detecting deceit, but rather a combination of very fine-tuned skills at the same time working together to make sure that the verbal is connected to the nonverbal, that what they are saying is matching the way they're behaving and what they're doing. So again, when I ask you if I was really involved in a fatal hit and run accident and didn't call the police, or if I was really involved in a hit and run at all, am I telling the truth? Okay, that's my week one speech, everybody. Now I'm going to introduce you to my audience. Here is my husband, Carlos, and our friend, Parker, He's in town. I'm missing my third person, but I will explain that later.